So it means there are shrines with temples in them, or temples with shrines in them. 皆さんこんにちは and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. One of the things you will surely be visiting when you come to Japan, the shrines and temples, right? In Kyoto, which I live now, Kiyomizu-temple, Fushimiinari-shrine, and Kinkaku-temple, for example, are all very famous. I'm pretty sure that it's on your to-do in Japan list too. But do you know the differences between shrines and temples? I remember when I was working in the tourism industry, there was a guest who asked me, wait, shrines and temples are different? He thought that it was just a different way of calling the same thing. However, these two things are completely different. So today, as a Japanese man born and living in Kyoto, I will introduce the 5 main differences between shrines and temples. At the end of the video, I will introduce 3 of my favorite shrines and temples in Kyoto that no one talks about. And even if you get confused somewhere during the story, that's okay. I will wrap everything up again at the end of the video in today's conclusion. それでは本日も参りましょう。1. The religion. The first and most important difference between shrines and temples is what religion it belongs to. Shrines belong to Shintoism, and temples belong to Buddhism. Shrines are originally places where gods of Japan reside, and temples are originally places where the monks live and study the doctrines of Buddhism. So saying that shrines and temples are the same is almost like saying churches and mosques are the same. By the way, what is Shintoism? Shintoism is Japan's indigenous religion, cultivated over many years since ancient times. It is a so-called polytheism that worships all nature around us, like mountains, forests, trees, and rocks. However, many point out that Shintoism is technically not a religion because it doesn't have a scripture and doesn't propagate nor preach. So this is why the name Shintoism was finally born after Buddhism was introduced to Japan. And this also means that Shinto shrines only exist in Japan, while temples exist around the world. 2. What is worshipped? Because they belong to different religions, what is worshipped there is of course different. At shrines, the mountains, forests, trees, and rocks of that region, which are considered as gods, are worshipped. However, there are some shrines that are built to worship people, like the imperial family or famous samurai. On the other hand, temples worship Buddha and the high priests who have reached enlightenment. This is why you hardly find any statues in shrines, but in temples, you find many Buddhist images. At shrines, there are usually swords and mirrors inside the inner sanctuary as items where the gods are believed to reside. 3. The gates. One really easy way to distinguish a shrine to a temple is the type of gate. Shrines have gates called torii that looks like this. Temples have gates called sammon that looks like this. Each gate is protected by a pair of guardians that are positioned on the left and right sides. Homainu, guardian dogs, protect torii, and myozo, guardian gods, protect sammon. Torii and sammon both stand as a barrier or gateway that separates the human world to the holy grounds. However, if you actually visit shrines and temples, you will soon realize that there are some shrines and temples that have both the Tori and Sammon. This is because, since Buddhism was introduced to Japan in the 6th century, they've often been mixed together until Westernization that took part in the 19th century. This was possible because, again, Shintoism was not thought of as a religion, but more of a local belief and tradition. Having faith in Buddhism didn't mean you can't worship your local gods anymore. And another reason why this was okay is because Shintoism is a polytheistic religion, so believing in another religion wasn't considered a problem for about 1,000 years in Japan. So it means there are shrines with temples in them, or temples with shrines in them. However, usually the most outer gate represents if it's a shrine or a temple, so it's a good way to find out which is which. Number 4. Who is working? The people who work at shrines and temples are there for different purposes. And if you take a look at these pictures, you would realize that they look quite different too. First of all, the people working at shrines are called shinshoku, or kannushi, the Shinto priests, and miko, the priestess. The top-rank Shinto priest of that shrine is called guji. The priest is a position that serves the shrine and perform affairs and prayers. There are also Shinto maidens who assist the priests and serve dances during the Shinto rituals. On the other hand, the people working at temples are called soryo, monks, and ama, nuns. The top-rank monk of that temple is called jushoku. Their basic job is to chant sutras and preach at temples. In addition, they give sutras at funerals and manage temples and graveyards. Number 5. The way to worship. Lastly, the way you worship the gods at each place are different. However, many Japanese people don't know about this and often get confused and make mistakes too. If you are at shrines, the way to worship is the famous Nihai, Nihakushu, Ichai, which means 2 bows, 2 claps, and 1 bow. On the other hand, at temples, you just have to quietly press your hands in front of your chest and slightly lower your head. So you don't want to be making any clapping sounds at Buddhist temples. But why 2 bows, 2 claps, and 1 bow at shrines? While many Japanese believe that this was a rule from ancient times, this was actually created quite recently. In 1875, after Japan westernized, the government made rules about how the festivals and ceremonies at shrines should be held. This is because, in the time of westernization, the political system changed from recognizing autonomy in each region to a centralized system. Many rules, including those of shrines, were unified in order to follow the way of Western countries. Until then, each region and shrine had their own way of praying and worshiping. However, the method of worshiping was revised many times once it was set in 1875, and it finally became the sophisticated way we do today in 1948, after World War II. Before we end this video, let me introduce to you my 3 favorite shrines and temples in Kyoto. I really recommend you visit them if you have a chance to come to Kyoto. If you would like to learn more about these shrines and temples, please take a look at the links in the description box below. 1. Seimei Jinja. 2. Honnoji. 3. Takeisao Jinja. 1. Seimei Jinja. This shrine was built in 1007, over 1000 years ago. It was meant to worship the soul of Abe no Seimei, the first onmyoji, the founder of the onmyo skills. Yes, that onmyoji you often see in anime and manga. He was a real guy. Abe no Seimei had magical skills of observing the movement of stars and clouds, moving through the celestial body to identify any good or bad events that might happen in the palace. He worked as a close associate for 6 generations of emperors and left many legendary achievements by correctly foreseeing the future and helping them to make crucial decisions. It is believed that by praying to Abe no Seimei at this shrine, he will protect you from various disasters and heal illnesses and injuries. It's just a 15-minute bus ride from Nijo Castle, so I think going here can easily fit into your schedule. 2. Honnoji. Honnoji is a temple that every Japanese learns about in history class. This is because it is known for the place where the famous Oda Nobunaga was assassinated. Oda Nobunaga is the first samurai of the 3 heroes of the Sengoku era, and he was the one to almost conquer all of Japan for the first time in history. He is very famous in battle video games too, as a strong bad dude icon. So I think many of you have heard his name before. In 1582, right before he was able to achieve his ambition to rule all of Japan, he was betrayed by a subordinate and was burnt to death together with this temple. However, in 1592, it was rebuilt in the place where it is now by Oda Nobunaga's other subordinate and the second samurai of the 3 heroes, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. This very important historical event is already a good enough reason to visit this temple, but the best part is the museum they have inside. Not only do they display multiple historical treasures, the highlights for me are all the katana swords and armor that have centuries of history. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to take photos, but I highly recommend you visit here someday and enjoy the beautiful pieces of art. 3. Takeisao Jinja. This shrine, compared to the other 2 I introduced to you, was built quite recently in 1869 by the order of Emperor Meiji. It's actually built to worship a certain person, Oda Nobunaga. Again, I think I don't have to explain about him anymore. The reason why I love this shrine is not just because it's related to samurai history, but because of its large site area. While some shrines and temples are quite small, and you can easily see everything within 30 minutes, the Takeisao Jinja can be enjoyed for about half a day. Also, it's a little far away from the center cities of Kyoto, so it's kind of like a hidden gem, where the nature there is beautiful too. Then lastly, today's conclusion. There are mainly 5 differences between shrines and temples. 1. The religion. Shrines belong to Shintoism and temples belong to Buddhism. Shrines are originally places where the gods of Japan reside, and temples are originally places where the monks live and study the doctrines of Buddhism. 2. What is worshipped? Shrines worship nature of that region, or sometimes a certain person like the imperial family or famous samurai. Temples worship Buddha and the high priests who have reached enlightenment. 3. The gates. The shrine have gates called torii with komainu guarding them, and temples have gates called sammon with myozo guarding them. However, there are some shrines with temples in them, or temples with shrines in them too. 4. Who is working? The people working at shrines are called shinshoku or kannushi, the Shinto priests, and miko, the priestess, who serve the shrine and perform affairs and prayers. The people working at temples are called Soryo monks and Ama nuns, who give sutras at funerals and manage temples and graveyards. 5. The way to worship. At shrines, the way to worship is the famous Nihai, Nihakushu, Ichihai, which means 2 bows, 2 claps, and 1 bow. At temples, you just have to quietly press your hands in front of your chest and slightly lower your head. So you don't want to be making any clapping sounds at Buddhist temples. My 3 favorite shrines and temples are Seimei-jinja, Honnoji, Takeisao-jinja. I hope you can visit them if you have a chance to come to Kyoto. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If this video helped you to deepen your understandings towards religions in Japan, please hit the like button to let me know. And my goal is to achieve 100,000 subscribers by January 2022, so your help would mean a lot. In this channel, we can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. どうもありがとうございました。So everyone, once again, thank you very much for watching this video and welcome to the Omake Talk. Here today at the Omake Talk, I just wanted to add a small portion of information. At number 5, I talked about how you worship each place differently, right? Actually, in this video, I only introduced about how you do the prayers, right? How you pray, the 2 bows and 2 claps and such. But actually, there are a lot more rules to how to properly, there's actually rules like how you step in through the gates. I talked a little bit about this in my other videos when I went to our first visit to shrine in the beginning of the year with the family, my wife, my daughter. But you have to bow before you go through the gates actually. And in temples, you actually have to bow, but you don't just bring your head down. You have to put your hands together in front of your chest and bow and then go through the Sammon, the gate. And for women, you have to go in with your right foot, or right leg. And for men, you have to go in with your left. And there's rules, small rules like this too. The reason why I didn't talk about this in this video is because as I was, writing down what I should talk about, when I started writing down all the small, all the detailed rules about how to do the worship and everything, I realized that this video was gonna get too long. And it was starting, the theme is the difference between temples and shrines, right? But it was kind of becoming the manner video about how you should visit these places. So I kind of cut that out and introduced the main part. How you bow is really the main part. Because to be honest, if not every Japanese knows about this, bowing before going to gate. I've actually probably hardly seen any people putting their hands together in front of the temple gates before they enter. Maybe a few, but very rare. So it's not forced or anything. And I also want to add that I did introduce, a few differences in rules today. But again, these were all very different in the past for a very long time in history. Most of history, it was all original to each place, So there are some shrines that don't do the 2 bows, 2 claps, and 1 bow. Some shrines do it with 4 claps, for example. And there are some places where you need to wash your hands, where you wash your hands, you have that rule too. But there are some places where you don't have to, and it's really up to that shrine and temple. So I hope you can just keep in mind the few things I introduced today. And when you actually do visit these shrines and temples, you can ask or take a look at the rules at that specific shrine or temple to learn about how they actually do it. So you don't have to be too nervous, by the way. I hope you just keep it in mind.
And I am hoping to make a video about how to, properly, or, there's a lot of people who are worried about how they should go to worship the shrines and temples. I really always say that you don't have to be that nervous, but I do want to make a video about that soon. But the problem is because of the, the effects of the coronavirus. For example, the water places where you wash your hands, they're not in use right now because people all use the ladles together, and the water, everyone used the water together, so it's not good, to protect people and such. So maybe after everything's settled down a little bit and the shrines and temples, everything, is run normally, like back to normal, I'll be able to go to one of these shrines and temples and make these videos someday. But for now, I'll have this video for you. Alright, then everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.